Hi guys, welcome to this live stream, impromptu, because Share Factory is not being very nice. So basically, I have been working on this Saints Row the Third Remastered review for the past couple of weeks, not really, for over a month, pretty much. And basically it says the maximum project duration that you can have on Share Factory is 80 minutes. But guess what? You can only render about 60 minutes of that. So as you can see, I've gone over it by 13 minutes, which means, unfortunately, all of my work, I cannot render it. That's dumb. I really think that's dumb. I hope Share Factory Studio on PS5 allows more time to render, but yeah, as for now, unfortunately, I'm unable to, upload it as I wanted to upload it. I wanted to upload it on the 23rd of November, but I'm just going to have to do it straight away, essentially. So, yes, here it is, the Saints Row the Third review, basically. Saints Row the Third retrospective, 11 years later. I'm sorry that it has to be live, but essentially, it will be seen in the same quality anyway. So this is a short little intro, just to explain why it's streaming instead of actually just premiering like I wanted it to. This is essentially the same thing, regardless. So, yeah. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for watching. If you're watching afterwards, of course, after the stream is finished, I'll be having timestamps in the description and the comments. I hope you guys enjoy this. I've worked really hard on it, and now I'm just going to go and do the Saints Row 4 review. So yeah, without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy Saints Row the Third, 11 years later. Saints Row is extremely impressive, being both a series that's held in high regard and a series that is still largely unknown. Now that's mostly down to the behemoth that is Grand Theft Auto, and it is a shame that most people that play GTA 5 will likely never play Saints Row, especially after recent events. Once upon a time, however, this was a franchise that boasted arguably the greatest gangster game ever made in Saints Row 2, alongside arguably the greatest superpowered game with Saints Row 4, and for most fans, that statement still stands. But something that everybody can agree with is the issue that Saints Row has had since Saints Row 2 released, and that is, it suffers from an identity crisis. This is a series that went from competing with Grand Theft Auto to becoming a video game version of The Matrix. Today, we will be talking about the game that began this crisis, the game that eventually became the most popular but also most polarizing game in the series. I am Sly Geordie, and this is Saints Row the Third, 11 years later. To begin our retrospective, we should start by detailing what led up to the Third's release. Saints Row 2 put Saints Row on the map. What was originally touted as a pretty good GTA clone became a game that a lot of people that knew about Saints Row was starting to prefer over Grand Theft Auto 4, a game that released the same year in 2008. This was largely down to the fact that GTA 4 had taken a more realistic and grounded approach, whereas Saints Row 2 had leaned more into the crazy stuff that you could do within an open world crime sandbox. This, along with a story and memorable characters that took themselves seriously, really turned Saints Row 2 into the smash hit it deserved to be, setting the stage for what would eventually turn into Saints Row the Third. Volition, the developers of Saints Row, saw an opportunity to bring more fans to the franchise, and since Saints Row 2 more or less completed a story that had begun in 2006, they saw it fit to provide a soft reboot to the franchise. I think this was a good decision. Regardless of what you think of Saints Row the Third, you have to understand that it is probably the best game to introduce someone to Saints Row. You don't have any obvious continuations of the previous games, and therefore new players don't exactly feel like they're missing pieces of an overall story like they would for SR1, 2 or 4. This is great for new players, so I can fully understand why Volition made this decision. However, They failed to take fans of the previous games into account as much, which is what caused the disconnect within the fanbase to take shape and attempt to pull Volition into different directions as to what Saints Row should be. Personally, although I feel like Saints Row the Third is Saints Row in its purest form, the definitive game if you will, the story definitely should have taken Saints Row 2 into account a lot more than it really did. Volition had seen that people were really enjoying the crazy and wacky things you could get up to within SR2 and decided to crank it up to 11 for SR3. This, unfortunately, meant sacrificing the ability for the story to take itself seriously, which was one of the best characteristics of the previous game. It's easy to just say that, and it's a different thing altogether to explain it, so here is the story, analysed. After the events of Saints Row 2, the 3rd Street Saints now own Stillwater, and have merged with Ultor, a corporate superpower in that game, to become the Saints Ultor Corporation. Being at the top comes with many perks. The Saints are now celebrities. The boss, Johnny Gat, Pierce and Shaundi all being idolized and beloved across the globe, having their own merchandise sold within their own store by the name of Planet Saints, and their own energy drink, Saints Flow. I really like this concept. Almost every game in this genre has you starting at the bottom, working your way up to the top, but Saints Row the Third has you start at the top. You fall a little, but being famous means you'll never be as low as you were in Saints Row 1 and 2 again, for example. In other words, the Saints have sold out. Gone are the days of fighting with other gangs in the streets of Stillwater. They've conquered it. Nobody would dare cross the Saints after what happened to the sons of Shaundi, the Ronin, and the Brotherhood. Even Ultor were brought to their knees by the Saints, and in present day, the Saints can literally do no wrong. They are a brand now. This is how our story begins, with a commercial for Saints Flow starring Pierce and the rest of the Saint Lieutenants gearing up to film a movie. Except this warm-up isn't just any warm-up. The boss, Johnny Gat and Shaundi, feeling untouchable, decide to rob a bank as a publicity stunt for their upcoming movie, with actor Josh Burke tagging along. The heist, however, goes badly wrong as the bank has a type of security unseen in Stillwater before, rivaling even the Ultor Masako SWAT team from SR2. The Saints are captured, and this is where we create our character. Since my original playthrough of the third, my first experience of Saints Row being in 2021 going into this year, I've since played the other games in the franchise, and after having finished Saints Row 2 recently, I wanted a continuation of that character. I chose voice 2, Ken Michael, as his voice was the one I used in Saints Row 2. After this, we're thrown straight into jail, and even though the police are in the Saints' pocket, someone paid more to have the Saints handed to them. On a plane heading toward a city called Steelport, we are introduced to Philippe Loren, head of the Morningstar Gang and a multi-international crime organization called the Syndicate, along with his two twin assistants, Viola and Kiki. The Syndicate involves the Morningstar, headed by Loren, the Deckers, a hacker group headed by Matt Miller, and the Luchadors, a wrestling gang headed by Killbane. They propose a deal with the Saints to take 66% of their revenue in exchange for their lives. The Saints naturally disagree, and this results in a fight with Loren, with Johnny Gat telling the boss and Shaundi to get off of the plane, with him planning to fly it back to Stillwater. The boss reluctantly agrees, fighting through to the hangar with Shaundi, but as they're getting ready to jump...
Johnny, we're about to jump!
Right on. I'll see you at Stillwater.
Johnny? Gat is presumably shot dead by the Morning Star. This is where we run into our first problem with Saints Row 3. They've killed off a beloved character in a way that is almost disrespectful from a writing's perspective. This is a guy that has been everyone's favourite character since the first Saints Row. Someone who provided people with some of the best memories within those first 2 games. Killed off within the first hour. Someone as important as Johnny Gat is to Saints Row should be killed off in a much more respectful and fulfilling way. Not killed off screen and almost forgotten about for the majority of the game. For those who haven't played Saints Row, Gat is essentially to Saints Row what CJ is to Grand Theft Auto. He is the face of the Saints. What follows is what sets the tone for the rest of the game. A crazy cool mission, shooting down enemies while falling out of the plane through the sky. This is a really fun mission, and has a couple of funny moments between the boss and Shaundi before they both land in Steelport for the first time.
Gentlemen, negotiations were less than successful. Viola and Kiki will spread the word. Steelport belongs to the Syndicate, and the Saints are not welcome. Mr. Killbane, gather your luchadores and bring me their leader's head. Mr. Miller, hack into the Saints' accounts and leave them nothing.
So here we are, getting our first look at the city of Steelport, and our first impressions are, well, it's beautiful and its lights are attractive to look at, especially with its multiple advert-filled skyscrapers lighting up the streets below. I really do like Steelport, but it's just not Stillwater. It's not as detailed, in-depth, or secretive as that city can be, and in comparison, Steelport kinda sucks. Graphically, however, it looks great, and much better than Saints Row 2. The animations are also better than 2, resulting in a much more modernised and smooth experience, especially in Saints Row the 3rd Remastered, which was released in 2020, and despite what Saints Row 2 fans will tell you on Reddit, this is one of the best remasters of the entire decade. However, playing the game at 60 FPS can result in stability issues, something that is often complained about with the game crashing at random points and forcing a restart. This thankfully can be avoided by playing the remaster at 30 FPS. Yes, I know it isn't ideal, but honestly, the remaster has some pretty good options, like turning off the most horrible invention in video game history, motion blur. There's also film grain options which can make the game look a little sharper as well, so essentially, if you can deal with 30 FPS, you're going to have a good experience either way. I don't recommend playing at 60 FPS, but I did try for this review until around Act 2 when the game started having problems like crashing, for example, which was when I started playing at 30 frames until the final missions, which I was going to play at 60 FPS at all costs. The character creator, as I forgot to mention earlier, is the best it has ever been. Some people even preferring it over the reboot's customization option, so overall, a great job. It astounds me how a game made in 2011 has better character customization than most modern games today, if not all of them. My inspiration for this version of my character was obviously I wanted to try and recreate my Saints Row 2 character as much as possible, but also like celebritify it, if that's a word. So obviously we got a little bit of makeup on, dyed black hair. I really wanted to show that I really wanted to make it clear that we had reached celebrity status with this version of my character, and I feel like I did a good job. Clothing unfortunately has taken a downgrade. You can't layer them anymore like you could in Saints Row 2 or change hat positions, etc, so clothing customization is a step down, although the choices are, I think, a little better. Accessibility of stores within Steelport, especially clothing stores, are much better here. I used to feel like I was wasting time in SR2 looking for the store that sold a particular piece of clothing, and it had a little too much of just one store in my opinion. I wish there were multiple of the same store more often in Stillwater. In SR3, this wish is granted with Planet Saints. I love this store. Every time you walk in, you've got this absolute banger of a track playing on its speakers, which I can't play because copyright. Damn you, YouTube. But the type of clothing you would find at a place such as Impressions or Branded from SR2 has all been bundled into Planet Saints, which I personally prefer. Other clothing stores include Let's Pretend, which sells cosplay, Leather and Lace, which sells... I really don't want to get flagged on here, but I mean, look at this place. And of course, Nobody Loves Me, the emo paradise. Throughout my playthrough, I made outfits from all these stores, mix and matched sometimes too, and was really happy with some of the choices I made. However, there is a saving bug sometimes, which meant some that I had made were never able to be saved. A small bug, but a frustrating one at that. Weapons feel a lot better to use, they pack a lot more punch, and the aiming is a lot more modernised and accessible this time round. Not that earlier Saints Rows had bad shooting, mind you, it was just difficult to transition from virtually any other game with shooting to what Saints Row 2 had, for example. I especially love how the shooting sound changes when you're close to running out of ammo, and of course, we have a lot more wacky weapons this time, including this thing. You gotta love it. Welcome to Saints Row. There's some really cool takedowns, some are literal wrestling moves like the DDT, and of course running and jumping through car windshields because who needs doors? Driving is a lot easier, but not quite hand-holding like Grand Theft Auto 5 for example. Not really much else to say here, it's pretty easy to get used to. Not really stand out, but it gets the job done. The boss doesn't sing the music when sat idle in the car anymore though, which just adds to the lesser feeling of immersion in Steelport compared to what was possible in SR2 Stilwater. Oh, and before I forget, in the remaster, a lot of the vehicles' models were completely redone, and I like it. And I did definitely notice this with the Temptress after playing Saints Row 4. Alright, so here we are onto the soundtrack, and I thought I'd do a little tier list for basically the soundtracks in this game. All in all, I think the OST, the original soundtrack for Saints Row the 3rd, so that is songs like the main theme and themes that play after completing a mission, are perfect. I love them. A lot of them are pretty electronic. The Mission Complete themes are electronic anyway, so it's a lot like K-12, which is the electronic songs, and then the main theme has a mix of hip-hop and electronic as well, which I really like. But let's get into it, and first of all I'm going to address K-Rhyme 95.4. So, if you know me at all, my favourite music genre is easily hip-hop. And that's what makes K-Rhyme so disappointing in Saints Row the 3rd. Now don't get me wrong, there are some really good tracks on here, which I will get into in a bit, but there is a reason why I put it in D tier. It just, all in all, there's only like, I think 4 good tracks on K-Rhyme. This was around the time where hip-hop kind of took a nosedive. This is 2011. So in Saints Row 2, we had like One Thing by Amory. Great song. Apache, Gangsta, you know. I don't want to swear in this video because I want it to do good in the algorithm. What else? Nas, NY State of Mind. Awesome song. And there was 50 Cent was on it as well. It was perfect. K-Rhyme was really good. But for some reason, it's really bad here. There are some really good tracks. Really bad tracks, sorry. But there are some good ones like Kanye's Power, Throw Your Hands Up, Tyler the Creator's Yonkers, and Yellow Wolf's Good to Go. So, there's that. Next up is Gen X. Not really much to say on this. I don't really know what genre it is. I think it's like some kind of rock, but it's not heavy rock or whatever. It's alright. It's alright to listen to. I put it in C tier because I don't really listen to that type of music. I'm fine with it, and I do like listening to it in video games a lot, like FIFA, for example. FIFA used to have a lot of songs that were on Gen X. Well, they sounded like the songs you would find on Gen X. I like Gen X. It's alright, but I wouldn't say it's like an overall favourite, and I wouldn't really say there's any standouts neither. But the highlights for me were songs called Diamond Eyes, Clarion Call, Lost Desire, and Stop Searching. K-12, I've already said this, electrical and dubstep. I usually avoided it in this game because I didn't think it really suited it, especially in Saints Row 2 as well. K-12 just did not suit it at all. the vibe that Saints Row 2 was setting out. And it doesn't really match here neither, but good music is good music. So, yeah. Nice to see K12 is still pretty good. Saints Row 4 was the game that kind of got me into electronical stuff, so, and dubstep. So, yeah. S tier for me, highlights being Jokers on the Scene, Satisfaction, Oh No You Don't, Wallflowers, and 31 Seconds to Die. Classical is classical music, that's good in any game in this genre, highlights everything. Adult Swim, WDDT, CPDG, I don't know what genre this is, I don't even have the faintest idea, I think it's like a mix of stuff. I thought it was pretty mid, I kind of hold the same feeling towards it as I would, Gen X, but I think we could put it below Gen X. I did put it C tier, but no, it wasn't as bad as K-Rhyme. So it's C, but it's below Gen X. So Gen X would be like upper C, Adult Swim lower C. Cabron, whatever. Foreign hip hop, Latin hip hop, I think it was. B tier. I don't understand the words, but the instrumentals sound like what I would have wanted the majority of K-Rhyme to sound like. Maria Joanna is such a great song. Friends, Todeva, No Hey Na. That's the highlights for me. The Blood, heavy metal, aka emo music, whatever. This is the type of music I used to listen to when I was a little younger. Maybe when I was like 14, 15. So I do like a lot of the songs on here. Some of them, unfortunately, a couple tracks just don't fit on The Blood. There's a song called Engine Rex, I think it is. That sounds like it should be on K12, but it isn't for some reason. So there's that. But yeah, that's The Blood. Heavy metal highlights, Feel Like I Do, Apocalyptic Havoc, World War 3, Armor Goddamn, Get In, Rise, Rebel, Resist, and Engine Rex. The mix, 1890s era pop, not really too much to say here. Easy S tier, highlights being Holding Out for a Hero, Relax, You're the Best, Return of the Mac, Shout at the Devil, and It's My Life. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's get back into this story. So, our first order of business is what any gangster would do in a new city. Find the nearest gun store, named Friendly Fire, which returns from Saints Row 2. The tattoo shop Rusty Needle also returns, along with the plastic surgeon image as designed. After getting a gun, we decide to think it's a really good idea to attack the Steelport armory to get military-grade weapons, and so we drag Shaundi with us to carry out this act. In literally the third mission. This is where we are reintroduced to Pierce, a character I absolutely love and is charming in so many ways. I mean, who gives a damn about Pierce? Anyhow, he is able to pick us up with the rest of the crew and set up shop in an apartment belonging to an ex of Shaundi. This is where we truly see how much of a character change has occurred within her. In Saints Row 2, she is a stoner hippie who, of course, smokes a lot of drugs, but is useful as she provides a lot of information from her countless number of exes to us to help the Saints.
Johnny's dead and you're throwing a fucking party?
Well, when you say it like that, sure it sound bad.
I was saddled up in a human pony show. Will you see me crying about a little girl?
I swear to God, I will shove that thing down your throat hole.
Her carefree attitude and almost sibling rivalry with Pierce really helped immerse us to them in that version of the gang. However, here she has a quick temper and is always the first to fire a shot in battle. Yeah, she's on the front lines here this time, instead of working behind the scenes and occasionally being taken hostage like she was in Stillwater. Saints Row 4 has a pretty good explanation for this change, that being she had to drop the drugs due to the schedule of her reality TV show. But since that game wasn't out yet and we're coming straight off of Saints Row 2, seeing Shaundi's character change in the third can be quite jarring to say the least. The fans' confusion is, well, justified. Then there's you, the boss of the Saints. In Saints Row 2, you were almost this unhinged character. You would stop at nothing to get what you want and were relentless. You're largely the same here in that aspect, but the attitude is almost totally different. the boss would pretty much kill everyone in a lot more brutal ways without a second thought, such as trapping Mera of the Brotherhood's girlfriend in the trunk of her car before being crushed by her own boyfriend's monster truck, stabbing Kazuo Akuji with his own sword and leaving him stuck on a burning down boat. He'd snap at his lieutenants frequently and wouldn't take disrespect lightly at all. He still had this caring side to him, of course, like when Shaundi got kidnapped by the Sons of Samdi, for example, and while this remains mostly intact in the third, the anger and unbridled rage is mostly gone, being replaced by more of a comedic tone. But you know what? I think this change is one that makes sense, sort of. Now, before you chop my head off for daring to say that, let me explain. The boss in Saints Row 2 had woken up from a 5-year coma to a completely changed Stillwater, with the Saints almost completely extinct. In an instant, 5 years of his life were taken away. Everything you'd earned in Saints Row 1 is gone, and you start from the bottom again. Even worse, as you aren't just joining the Saints now, you have to rebuild it. By the end of Saints Row 2, the Saints are stronger than ever. You own Stillwater, you're the leader, the city at your mercy and fingertips. You found out who put you in a coma and exacted your revenge on those that betrayed you. Other than Dex, but we don't talk about that. So all that taken into account, why would you remain angry? The Saints are a household name. You are beloved and people are literally bowing at your feet. I know I wouldn't be mad anymore. I'm styling and profiling. So I understand the boss's change in Saints Row 3, but again, this doesn't excuse how quickly they seem to get over the death of Johnny Gat. Yes, they mention things like, "That was for you, Johnny," or "Just like Johnny did it," but these feel tacked on, almost as if they were trying to erase the memory of Gat as much as they could. I get that it's a soft reboot, but at least kill a character like Gat, who's been around since the first game, in a more respectful way, and have his death respected more than just a quip here and there.
Whoa, Shaundi, we can't mourn Gat forever. Eventually, you gotta get back on the horse. No offense, brother. That's right.
Whatever.
Damn, girl! Life is for the living and shit. You know what I'm saying?
Shaundi's whole character arc in this game revolves around getting revenge for Gat's death. So why is the boss so nonchalant about it? Once again, it's jarring, especially coming from the previous 2 games. Eventually, Pierce decides Shaundi's apartment isn't big enough for the crew, so he starts to scope out a penthouse owned by the Morningstar in an attempt to take it for the Saints. This is one of the best missions in the game, as you take out all the Morningstar in the penthouse with Kanye's power from the slick and incredible CGI trailer, go watch that if you haven't seen it, playing in the background. After this, we're back to our activities. Yep, Act 1 is filled with these activities, side activities essentially, to replace would-be missions. And this is where we are introduced to buying properties away from the Syndicate's gangs, the Morningstar, Deckers and Luchadors. The latter two not being properly introduced until Act 2. This game is extremely lucky that the activities are fun. Otherwise, it would feel like a modern Ubisoft game. So I feel like this is the best situation to kind of segue into talking about activities. There are a good variety of activities here with the list as followed. The one you see on screen is insurance fraud, which is a staple of the Saints Row franchise, where you essentially throw yourself into traffic to commit, well, insurance fraud. There's trafficking. This is where you and a fellow member of the Saints advertise your exploits across Steelport. Mayhem, where you destroy as much stuff as possible within a set amount of time. Tank Mayhem, the same thing, but with a tank. There's one instance of Guardian Angel, which I think was essentially just a mission in Act 2. It comes up as an activity, but it's the only one that exists, believe me, I checked. Heli Assault, which is essentially trafficking in gameplay, but you're protecting them in a helicopter as they drive around. Snatch, basically pimping hoes. Escort, where you're picking up clients to get certain treatment from the hose. There is a second variation of this introduced in Act 2 with Tiger Escort, where you're driving a tiger around instead. Trailblazing is essentially a time trial where you have to reach checkpoints before time runs out, and there's a second variation of it called Cyberblazing, but they are bundled together for some reason. Gang operations, various groups of the gang set up shop around the city. It's your job to find them and take them out. And my personal favourite, Professor Genki's super ethical reality climax. One of the selling points of the game, a satirical take on a Japanese game show where the objective is just to murder. It's really charming and fun. Honestly, a welcome addition. And that's it. Yeah. There are some really fun activities from Saints Row 2 that were just not in Saints Row 3, like Fight Club, Fuzz, and Demolition Derby. Those are the ones I personally miss, but of course there are people who really miss others, like Septic Avenger as well, all of which were strong activities that strangely weren't here. Another difference, which I think is a positive, is that you no longer have to do activities to progress the story, but like I said earlier, the activities have now become part of the story. I personally disliked the old method in Saints Row 2, and it was sort of nice in this game to kind of burst through the story, as I'm that type of gamer who does the story first and the side content afterwards. But whoever thought it was a good idea to make activities the main story missions needs to not develop video games anymore, because that could have been tedious. If Saints Row side activities weren't Saints Row side activities, that would have been tedious. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, buying properties returns. Not as in-depth as it was in Saints Row 2, where you could buy fast food restaurants that you could eat at, for example. Another removed piece of content in Saints Row 3. So yeah, addressing the elephant in the room, Saints Row the 3rd feels incomplete compared to Saints Row 2. There is so much removed content, including indoor crib customization, a lack of a replay mission feature, and yeah, among other things, that just had a lot of fans scratch their heads and wonder where they went and what happened. I decided to roleplay a little this time around, and it made a lot more sense for me to take over downtown where the majority of Act 1's missions are located before going after Loren. Yeah, you go after the leader of the Syndicate and the one who supposedly killed Johnny Gat within the first couple of hours. This mission is where we meet a brute that's been cloned by the Syndicate named Oleg, and he helps us take out Loren with a massive ball that gets sent from the top of the Morningstar skyscraper with us on top, landing on Loren, and that's it. The supposed main villain is taken out. This is where a unique gimmick for Saints Row the 3rd comes in. We are presented with a choice. We either blow up the skyscraper to send a message to the rest of the Syndicate, gaining more respect, or we take the skyscraper for ourselves, earning more money. This choice gimmick is supposed to embellish a slight theme within the 3rd, and that is that the Saints have changed. They ain't the gangsters they once were and only care for the cash, something numerous characters including Johnny Gat and even luchador boss Killbane bring up to you. There are issues with this underlying theme, mainly being that it's hardly taken into account and almost feels as if it shouldn't be there, even though it's seemingly important every time, whenever it's brought up. There's so many contradictions with this, which I will get into every time they come up throughout the story, but for now, I chose to blow up the Morningstar HQ as it seemed more in line with what the boss would have done in Saints Row 2, and what they clearly wanted to do in going after Loren in the first place. Personally, it makes more sense to. The Saints are already global superstars, why would they need even more money? Also, the bomb that you use in the Morningstar HQ is the bomb that you get in the 3rd mission of the game. So it's like the game, it's like it wants you to blow up the Morningstar HQ and then it gives you the choice not to. I don't really see the point. Anyway, after the choice is made, the Saints decide to set up a funeral for Johnny Gat and head back towards Stilwater.
It's time we went back home and buried Johnny.
So with Loren taken out, the Syndicate no longer have their leader, and so we assume that they'll fall apart without one. The Saints have sent a message in Steelport and head back home to Stillwater to bury Gat. We are reintroduced to Monica Hughes, the widow of Alderman Hughes, who planned to kill the boss at the end of Saints Row 1 before the boat explosion. She is opening a new bridge in his honour which connects Stillwater to Steelport. Just as the ribbon is cut for its opening, we are properly introduced to luchador boss Killbane as he leads a charge against the Saints, blowing up the bridge with rocket launchers, sending them to the water below. Monica Hughes doesn't know about, she doesn't know what gang did this, but she swears vengeance, declaring war on the gangs of Steelport. Oleg informs the boss about Killbane, and the Saints return to Steelport to recruit 3 more lieutenants. Kinsey, an ex-FBI hacker with a vendetta against Matt Miller and the Deckers, who we save from them on a ship before she tells us about Zemos, a pimp who has been imprisoned at the BDSM club Safe Word. This is another one of my favourite missions, as the inclusion of this kind of stuff came almost completely out of left field for me, and it honestly made me laugh quite a bit, especially the human pony race at the end. Zemos also speaks in autotune, which makes him even more memorable.
This is a rescue, right? This ain't some elaborate setup for a gangbang.
Why you gotta put that image in my head, bro?
Oh, I'll go with rescue then. I would shake your hands, but them floors were a little sticky, if you know what I'm saying.
I really like him. After saving Zemos, Kinsey informs us of someone who hates Killbane more than anyone. Angel or Angel de la Muerte, voiced by none other than Hulk Hogan himself.
You're not one of Loren's brutes.
And you are not one of Killbane's luchador.
I love the inclusion of pro wrestling within this game, being a fan of it myself, so seeing Killbane cut promos in each cutscene really harkens back to my childhood and what I still enjoy. I love Killbane for this reason, as he is a parody of something I will always love, but I understand why people who don't watch pro wrestling would think he's pretty mid. After gaining 3 new recruits who want to take down the Syndicate as much as us, we get this cool little scene where we see how both sides of the story are handling the conflict, and the Battle of Steelport truly begins.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Philippe is dead, and we are at a crossroads. And the question is, who will lead the Syndicate to a new era?
Viola and Kiki were Mr. Loren's right hands.
I had someone else in mind.
Excuse me?
The Syndicate has to answer for what they did. And this time, we're taking the fight to them. Since we don't know Steelport, I brought in some people who do. This is Kinsey, Zemos, and Angel.
The barbarians are at the gate. We need a general, not an ambassador.
Calm down, Eddie.
What did you call me?
What would you like us to do, Killbane?
Something. Anything. Before I wonder why I keep you bookends around.
Talk to one of these guys, they'll have things for you to do. It's our time now. Let's get this shit started.
We are presented with 3 storylines to progress the story. 1. Work with Zemos to gain control over the prostitution business to finish off the Morningstar. 2. Work with Kinsey to survey and hack Decker's property to eventually take them down. 3. Train with Angel to be ready for our face-off with the luchador boss, Killbane. I started with Zemos, who has us doing activities such as trafficking, snatch, and escort, with one of my favourite missions taking us back to Safe Word, with Zemos auctioning us off as a sex slave.
That's an invitation to kick the Morningstar right in their collective pussy. They having an auction tonight. Flash the card. You're in.
So what, I pretend to be an eccentric millionaire?
Kinda. I'm gonna auction you off as a sex slave.
Fuck that.
Oh, quit being a bitch and get in the van.
I then started training with Angel, who has us doing the painful activities such as insurance fraud, trailblazing, and tiger escort to have us, quote-unquote, face our fears and prepare for the pain Killbane will apparently cause us before he deems us ready.
A fucking tiger?!
Don't lose the message in the method. You mastered your fear.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
Finishing off with Kinsey, who has us doing activities such as the only instance of Guardian Angel along with Heliosol and Cyberblazing to hack the Decker servers. I didn't really talk much about Kinsey earlier, so I'll talk about her now. I didn't really know what to think of her in this game. There really isn't much character development for Kinsey. There's the bare minimum, and that's it. And I remember saying in my initial playthrough that I didn't really think much of Kinsey until Saints Row 4. Saints Row 4 is the game that really Saints Row 4 is a great and underrated story, and I'll talk more about that when we get to that game's review. But in my second playthrough of this game, which is what you're seeing with this footage, I obviously liked Kinsey a lot more, but I must say that during my initial playthrough of Saints Row the Third, I thought Kinsey was just mid. Like, just your run-of-the-mill character, hacker, whatever. I didn't think much of her. She didn't have much of a character up until Saints Row 4. That doesn't mean she's bad, she's just serviceable at best in this game. So, after the Saints' takeover of Safe Word, Pierce decides to throw a party to celebrate, which does seem pretty bad considering Gat's death is still pretty fresh. We've already spoken of this scene and my problems with it, but afterwards we have this montage of the kind of parties the Saints like to throw before one of the hoes hold a gun to Pierce's head, prompting the boss to punch her in the face before all hell breaks loose.
Oh shit! These hoes ain't hoes!
The Saints survive, with Killbane losing his temper over Viola and Kiki as the hooker assassins were their idea. Having enough of Kiki's attitude, he snaps her neck in front of her twin sister Viola, which causes her to contact the boss and defect to the Saints. During this time, we also see Monica Hughes on the screen talking of the STAG initiative to help eradicate the gangs in Steelport. STAG are a private army, essentially. Introduced during Viola's meeting with the boss and Oleg, they are headed by Cyrus Temple and Kia, who immediately attack the Saints as well as the remains of the Syndicate. The boss immediately decides to get the Saints to a different hideout, away from the penthouse, and acts as a decoy by stealing a STAG VTOL, destroying the STAG convoys in the way. After this, they continue their pursuit of Matt Miller and the Deckers, as Miller had made his presence known during the boss's pursuit of Killbane, who was trashing the Saints on live television at the time.
No, no. Jane, my dear, please. The Saints are criminals. Call me eccentric, but I'm just an entertainer slash businessman slash philanthropist slash...
We get it.
Where are they?
No idea. They're broadcasting from an undisclosed location.
We'll fucking disclose it.
This is the same mission where we meet Jane Valderrama, the news presenter, who I personally remember from Saints Row 2, but I think she was even better in this game with her take on the game's events over the radio. I don't actually remember her being in Saints Row 4, unfortunately. I do remember her in Enter the Dominatrix, but I don't think she was on the radio at all. I'll have to, see if she was. But yeah, I think she was better in this game. Kinsey hatches a plan to steal a VR sort of chair thing to get into Matt Miller's digital domain, and with this done, we get a pretty cool mission where we infiltrate the Deckers server and take down Matt Miller once and for all. However, we don't kill him. In exchange for his life, he offers us two choices between owning a weapons or a car manufacturer before vowing to leave Steelport and never return. Killbane is oddly quite welcoming of Miller's departure, and either way, this officially brings Act 2 to a close, with only Stag and the Luchadors remaining.
These hands of mine were meant to rend bone, not hunt and peck on a keyboard.
Well, if typing's the issue, I can recommend some good voice recognition software. I know the best...
Shh. You stuck with me when I rose from Philippe's ashes like a phoenix. You and me, we've bonded.
That's lovely, but I feel it's time for me to move on. To be honest, I'm a little scared of, well, dying.
I do run a demanding workplace. Maddie, I appreciate how you've shared your concerns. I mean, the way Viola and Kiki handled their departures made me just want to kill someone, you know?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I've got a flight to catch, so...
Maddie.
Oh, God.
Feel free to list me as a reference anytime.
With the vast majority of the Syndicate dispatched and Steelport all but theirs, the Saints turn their attention to Stag and the Luchadors, learning about Josh Burke, an actor the Saints are familiar with, Nightblade, in the role of Stag's public mascot, being used to get the citizens of Steelport on their side. This is also a good cutscene for further embellishing the celebrity status we have acquired.
Set it up right. We'll get the drop on those motherfuckers.
Excuse me? Can you sign this?
The fuck is this?
Dude, it's Johnny's comic. He sold his likeness to Ultor. They're making a movie out of this shit.
Remind me to call Legal Lee about this.
Thank you.
Alright, so how do we find Burke? Chump could be anywhere.
Look, we lay the right bait, he'll come to us. That's why I need you and the new girl.
My name's Viola.
Your name's the Bloody Canoness.
You can't be serious.
Works for me.
The boss and Viola pose as the Cardinal and the Bloody Canoness, villains from the in-universe Nightblade show, to kidnap Josh Burke as leverage against STAG, which of course succeeds, although I'm gonna be honest, this is one of the more difficult missions in the game. Like, the game throws waves of STAG at you after the kidnapping of Burke. That, and you can't really crouch anywhere because you've got Burke over your shoulder. It's quite stressful. But anyway, with Josh Burke taken hostage to Shaundi's dismay...
I felt that the moment we met. That connection.
What?
Forbidden love.
Oh my god, can I just shoot this guy?
Shaundi, play nice now.
We then decide to attack STAG again and lead them to the penthouse, resulting in us getting put under siege by the military group, so not one of our smartest ideas. In the ensuing chaos, however, we come face to face with Cyrus Temple, who tells us to hand over Josh Burke, our hostage, in exchange for helping the Saints take over the city, which, by the way, is outright useless to me as I'd already taken over at this point, so I gave Josh back to Shaundi. This results in STAG destroying the penthouse, although this weirdly has no effect on the free roam, but it is important to note that handing Josh over to STAG would have resulted in the same outcome regardless, and away from the boss, STAG set their sights on his female lieutenant, Shaundi. Also, to further address the point of STAG destroying the penthouse not having any effect on the free roam, it also doesn't have any effect on the story, as the Saints HQ's penthouse appears in future cutscenes. So I heard Saints Row the Third I heard Saints Row the Third 100% had cut content, so I wonder if that had anything to do with this. Anyways, despite the minor victory, STAG need to recover from their wounds, and this leaves the boss with his sights set on Killbane once again. He meets Pierce, Shaundi and Viola, the latter telling him that taking Killbane's mask is worse than killing him. As a wrestling fan, I get this. Knowing who Rey Mysterio is under the mask kind of ruins the mystique, so this is fully believable, but again, I understand non-wrestling fans not understanding the rivalry with Killbane and being disappointed as a result. So, the boss teams up with Kinsey and Angel to take out all competition, so Killbane will have no choice but to fight them. Angel being most interested in this, as he was once Killbane's tag partner before being betrayed and left to wither away without his mask, his dignity. During this, they go on a full-blown massacre of Killbane's casino, fully taking it over and reclaiming Angel's mask with the intention of tricking Killbane into fighting Angel. This, of course, works, as in a final confrontation with Killbane before Murder Brawl 31, he accepts the boss's challenge to fight him, and the stage is set for their showdown. By the way, this is a pretty good promo from Killbane.
The best. The best is beating Sway the Spider God in a Tijuana scaffold match. The best is defending the world title 13 times in one night. The best is winning a last man standing match with 2 broken legs. Trust me, little Icarus. You're flying too close to the sun.
Oh my god, quit being a bitch and put your mask up.
If you want to be broken by the walking apocalypse, I will gladly oblige you.
Perfect. I've just set up a meeting for you with the mayor.
Should I care?
He's one of the most influential men in Steelport. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I don't take getting told what to do too well. Thought you'd figure that out by now.
Having the mayor on our side would be an advantage for the Saints.
But I won't be his bitch.
You're right. You won't be. He knows how the game is played.
As long as he does, I'm cool with meeting him.
Good.
And as you just heard, Viola informs the boss that the mayor of Steelport has requested to see him. The boss, as you heard, begrudgingly agrees and is fully prepared to be hostile until the mayor turns out to be...
Bert fucking Reynolds?
Who else could keep this town running? Besides, I love my constituents.
Sir, I'm a huge fan.
Excuse me, honey.
He informs the boss of a zombie problem that we may or may not have caused ourselves and asks us to solve it. And when Burt Reynolds asks you to solve a problem, you do it, no questions asked. I hate zombies. I tolerate them in The Last of Us because they ain't the focus of the story, but in any game where they are the focus, I find them so boring. Just an excuse for companies to put out a glorified survival horde mode. Ugh. We take care of it, of course, making sure no one else can be affected with the stag-made gas. Yeah, it was stag-made, I think. I don't know what the reason was to include zombies, but oh well. Stag arrive at the scene just in time for Cyrus Temple to get a call from the Senate's own Monica Hughes. She's coming to Steelport.
Zombies and Monica Hughes?
Murder Brawl 31 arrives, headlined by Killbane and the boss, but of course, when we come out, we introduce the return of Angel de la Muerte. To the shock and awe of the crowd, and we... What's this? Fight Club from Saints Row 2? That's what this essentially is. Where was this in the activities? We can pick up makeshift weapons, including a chainsaw.
Oh my god, a chainsaw! What the f?
Before we face off with Killbane himself after his thugs break Angel's legs. This is one of my favourite missions in the game for reasons already stated, and the wrestling moves and aesthetic during the Killbane fight. As Killbane is ready to be unmasked, he begs us to reconsider, promising us the secrets of his finisher, the Apoca Fist. Something I still to this day don't know what it is, because I always unmask him. Because why wouldn't I? Of course I'm going to humiliate Killbane.
Smile, Killbane. We're going nationwide.
No! It's shades of Angel de la Muerte as Killbane has been demasked.
Yes, we have seen the face of the walking apocalypse. And to be honest, it's a man with a receding hairline.
As the Saints celebrate, Killbane is seen backstage destroying his thugs in a fit of rage before vowing to reduce Steelport to ashes.
Killbane, it's just a match.
It's my fucking reputation! This is my city. I am its Caesar! And I get to fiddle while it burns.
Our celebrations are cut short, however, as the boss receives a call from Shaundi as she is captured by Stag, prompting the boss to come up with an insane plan of getting plastic surgery to look like Cyrus Temple, infiltrate their ship, and save Shaundi. Yes, I'm aware I've got this mixed up with an earlier mission. I think this comes before the zombie mission. So Killbane's mission, sort of. Murder Brawl finishes off the act. But either way, this mission in particular is a pretty funny mission, to be honest. Even stranger if your character is female. But the plan works as you blow up the ship in the process, signifying the end of Stag, or so we think. And since we took out Killbane more or less as well, this signifies the end of Act 3 as Saints Row the Third reaches its final conclusion. So here we are. We have reached the end of Saints Row the Third's campaign, marked by the mission 3-Way. The mission's opening cutscene shows the boss meeting with Oleg and Pierce inside the now magically fixed Saints HQ once again, where they are told about the Saints' legal team wanting him to do a screen test for their upcoming movie, Gangstas in Space, with the boss remarking,
"No, fuck that. We're done being corporate whores."
This plays more into the loose theme of the Saints selling out and them getting back to their roots, which is contradicted throughout the story, by the way, depending on the choices you make. The boss asks who's winning before a Stag VTOL is sent straight into the HQ's window as a massive battle for Steelport between Stag, the Luchadors, and the Saints has begun. Naturally, we go down there and begin to pick off the two remaining forces one by one until we end up at the armory, We find out some nice personal details like Oleg's growing feelings for Kinsey and the boss's secret fear of bees, which becomes funnier when you play one of the DLCs, although this secret depends on the voice you chose. This is one of the hardest missions in the game in my opinion, especially when you get to the armory, but it is nice to be able to run away from the battle and get to friendly fire should you need to refill your ammo. There's also the case of keeping Pierce and Oleg up and with you, which proves to be a challenge in itself no matter how much you've upgraded your homie's health. As the battle continues, we get an important call from two people presenting our final two choices for the game.
Like hell he is.
He's at the airport. There isn't much time.
Angel?
No, I can't let him win. We can't let him win.
Angel, sit tight till I get there, man. I'm coming. Hang on.
Hello, Saint.
You're wasting a lot of good men trying to arrest me, bitch.
I don't want to arrest you. It won't solve anything. People need to wake up and see the threat that scum like you are to innocent people. Once you blow up the Magarak Island, the whole world will see your true colors.
Don't be stupid. Saints aren't blowing up anything.
We'll see how many people believe that once Shaundi and Viola are found in the wreckage.
Now, obviously, you're going to want to know my opinion of these endings. They suck. Big time. One has a completely unsatisfying conclusion, and the other is completely contradictory of the boss's character since Saints Row 1. Although I am just talking about the missions these endings unlock, the endings of Three-Way are actually quite good on their own. It's just the epilogue missions that unlock... it's just the epilogue missions they unlock that strike problems of their own. So first of all, with I Need a Hero by Bonnie Tyler playing in the background, it's quite obvious the game would want you to save Shaundi. It's also in line with the boss's established character. Saints Row 2 boss would never leave Shaundi to die, and since this is still the same character, I always choose to save Shaundi for my initial run-throughs of the game. But for now, we're going to talk about the Killbane ending, which of course sparks its own problem as it is against the boss's already established feelings towards his lieutenants. He wouldn't leave Pierce and Shaundi to die. He saved Shaundi countless times before, so why would he suddenly decide to leave her? That, and Burt Reynolds is also a hostage, which plays into the boss's already established idolization of him. The boss of both Saints Row 2 and what has been established throughout this game simply wouldn't choose killing Killbane over saving Shaundi, Viola, and Burt Reynolds. It'd be completely out of character. Anyways, for this ending, we go to meet Angel and chase after Killbane, who was fled to the airport ready to leave Steelport. We blow up his plane and face one final showdown with the Walking Apocalypse. There's a really good cutscene here, a final Killbane promo if you will, detailing how the boss sold out and how Killbane himself helped change that once more, which isn't exactly wrong. This again plays into the theme I've mentioned throughout, that has been hinted at in the prologue in Act 1 before jarringly cast aside in Act 2 and 3 before being brought back at the end. Here, watch it for yourself.
So here we are, two titans among men, worshipped by mere mortals for bringing them blood and fire. This moment was an inevitability.
So's me killing you.
No. That's not how this book is written. The Saint's legacy ends here, not with a bang, but with a whimper.
You for real? It's over, Eddie. In 2 weeks, no one's gonna remember your name.
No one will remember me. You were a fucking clown, selling energy drinks and lunchboxes. You didn't care about the crowd, just a paycheck. And I changed that.
Bullshit.
Mark my words. When these hands are crushing your throat, your dying breath won't be an appeal to God or a message of love to your family. It'll be, thank you, Killbane.
Man, I'm gonna enjoy shutting you up.
And so we have one final fight, and this is pretty straightforward, just a glorified quick time event before we face the consequences of our choice.
Yeah.
Was it worth it?
You were right, Commander. Bring in the data lists.
I dislike this ending for reasons already stated, but I love this scene. The way Pierce asks the boss, was it worth it, to a response of silence before panning over to the altar symbol in the distance, shows how much the Saints have changed since merging with them, but also the emptiness that is obviously felt after killing Killbane. In other words, you made the wrong choice. After this, since the boss didn't stop Kia exploding Magarak Island, the Saints are blamed, prompting Monica Hughes to authorize the use of the Daedalus for Cyrus Temple. Stag film. The final mission, after choosing to kill Killbane, begins with a toast for the ones the Saints have lost, particularly Shaundi. As this happens, a massive aircraft weapon airship thingy, the Stag Daedalus, begins firing upon the city of Steelport, hoping to kill all the Saints by leveling the city to the ground. I know, extreme measures, am I right? This is a pretty decent mission, ending in a fight with Cyrus Temple and his VTOL that reminded me of Black Ops 3's Lotus Towers, although I played that game afterwards. But I actually played Black Ops 3 before I ever did this ending, so technically that statement still stands. Anyway, after Cyrus Temple is defeated and Stag is eradicated, the Saints make one final statement to the world.
Kinsey, round up every saint we can find. We're going on a field trip.
Even in a place that is no stranger to violence, today's assault on the city stands as the blackest time in Steelport's sordid history. While the government has yet to comment on the attack, we have a report.
No one runs, no one gets shot, understand? Sorry. Kinsey, you in the booth?
All set.
I got a message from Monica Hughes and her stooges. Dear bitch, Steelport is under new management and we don't answer to you. This is foreign soil now. Come at my city again and you'll go home in a fucking box. Back to you.
Not bad. You could be a weatherman or some shit.
I really like this scene. It's very reminiscent of how the boss was in Saints Row 2, but I just cannot back up this mission because everything prior is so against his character. I'll say it again. The boss from Saints Row 2 would never have let Shaundi die. This is the same character in the same universe. That wouldn't have changed. I'm so glad that this ending is not canon to Saints Row 4, and I really don't see how some Saints Row fans prefer it, even though I do agree the other ending does suck. So what about the other ending, the canon ending, saving Shaundi? Well, obviously since I Need a Hero is playing in the background, you have even more incentive to choose saving her as if you didn't already. You race through the streets of Steelport in one of the most iconic moments of the franchise before meeting up with Kinsey near Magarak Island. She tells you about the bombs and that you'll have to knock them off into the water, so you go about doing that, killing off swarms of Stag soldiers on the way. When you finally reach the top, you find Viola and Burt Reynolds tied up with Shaundi held by Kia, and you have to stun her and then shoot her. It's a pretty weak boss fight. Hell, on casual, you can straight up just keep shooting Kia in the head and it's game over. Really disappointing, but oh well. Kia has been stopped, Shaundi, Viola and Burt Reynolds are alive, and a treasured monument of Steelport is saved. The Saints are heroes.
Let's go home.
Hold it right there.
Unless the next thing out of your hole is thank you, we got a serious fucking problem.
They have a point, Commander. Like it or not, the Saints are heroes.
Are you shitting me, lady?
You declared martial law and knocked down half of the city. The Saints just saved a treasured monument. Who the fuck do you think the public will side with?
Yes, I can answer any questions. Jimmy over there.
They can give you the key to the goddamn city, but as soon as you screw up, we'll be back. And next time, STAG is gonna put you down.
Oh, I love you too, Cyrus.
So what's the play, boss? Go back to banging in Stillwater?
Not yet.
Now, if you'd ended the game right here, that would have been decent, as it wraps things up nicely, especially if you'd already unmasked Killbane, a fate worse than death, by the way, as you don't need to kill him, he's already defeated. The Saints are heroes. You own Steelport. STAG has been called off, and it's a nice ending for the game. Right? No, they ruined it. We find ourselves on the set of Gangstas in Space. Wait, what was that?
No, fuck that. We're done being corporate whores.
Why are we here? How much time has passed? How is Johnny Gat alive and here? Why is Killbane here? Why are we being friendly? Is that actually Killbane or a damn good clone? Why are the credits rolling now? It's so unsatisfying. I hate it so much, but I'll always choose it because the mission beforehand is satisfying for me. I just can't believe they'd screw it up like this. What a disappointment of an ending. But you know what? It's a mess, and that pretty much just sums up the story. Overall, Saints Row the Third is an incredible game that introduced many people to the series, including myself. But playing Saints Row 1 and 2 exposes the third story for the absolute mess that it is. It was completely unfocused and unsure of itself, choosing spectacle over substance. A lot of people like to blame this fact on 3 leaning even more into the wackiness, but Saints Row 4 directly contradicts that statement, with that game's story being crazy but focused, choosing both spectacle and substance. Although it leaned a lot more into spectacle, it still had a lot of substance, and the story was mostly pretty good. But that is a video for another time. At the end of the day, Saints Row the Third could be seen as a masterpiece if you view it on its own, but looking at it compared to 1, 2 and 4, it's no wonder that the third felt disjointed and disappointed a lot of Saints Row fans. Does that take much away from the game's overall quality? Maybe, but it's still a damn good time and is undoubtedly Saints Row in its definitive and purest form. Saints Row the Third plus Saints Row 2 with some Saints Row 4 style DLC would have made the reboot a perfect encapsulation of what Saints Row is, and it's a damn shame what has become of Volition and Saints Row's uncertain future by extension. Before we wrap things up, we should probably go into the DLCs and extra content for the game, starting with Horde mode, but it's spelt like, you know. This is exactly what it says on the box. I have no idea what it's doing here or how it even made it into the remastered version. I actually only played it for this video, so that's pretty much all I gotta say about that. As for the DLC expansion, starting from my least favourite, we have Gangstas in Space, not to be confused with the Canon ending's epilogue. This is basically the boss and an actress named Jenny, who plays Stilwater in the movie, going through the filming set pieces with a mean Hollywood writer who kisses up to us, the star, while looking down on Jenny. It's a pretty straightforward story, but I like it enough. I definitely like Jenny too. I wish we could have seen her in Saints Row 4.
The Earth is safe. For now.
Stupid motherfucking stupid ass.
Lilana?
What the fuck is happening up there? Jenny, say your goddamn line!
You killed that son of a bitch.
That's not your line! Oh, goddamn it, are you even off book?
Hey, Jenny, you're getting the crazy eyes again.
Oh!
Okay, Jenny. Jenny, talk to me.
I'm tired. I'm tired of him trying to kill us. I'm tired of him being mean. And I'm tired of his stupid fucking scarf.
Okay, this seems a little extreme, though.
Just doing what you taught.
Point.
You already blew the tank! Go back to 1! Are you dead? What the fuck
Next up is Genki Bowl 7. Have I mentioned how much I love Professor Genki? I love the whole game show thing, and it's my favourite Saints Row activity, and we get more of that here, with more activities like Genki Apocalypse, which is more of the same, just a more difficult version of the super ethical reality climax. We have this one activity where we're a massive ball of yarn causing carnage on the streets of Steelport, and then we have Escort, where we actually get to see Professor Genki himself. Overall, the DLC is a little disappointing in terms of story, but it's a damn fun time nonetheless. I would have liked to see more Genki, maybe find out more about his character. Could you imagine if a new Saints Row game had Genki as the main villain in his own city? I low-key want that. Just me? And finally, we have The Trouble with Clones, my favourite DLC. This is about some nerdy kid who clones Johnny Gat, who then proceeds to go on a rampage through Steelport as we try to calm him down. We have amazing moments such as Pierce singing,
Bounce like my chest did back in the day. Before I got this paper, before I got paid. You know.
guarding him in a beekeeper suit, a clone of Aisha reuniting with Johnny before being promptly blown up, and of course, that low-key touching final scene. Well, there you have it. In conclusion, Saints Row the Third became the best-selling Saints Row game, and you can see a big reason why when you go back to view the trailers, especially the Power CGI trailer. There was clearly a lot more money put into the advertising of the game compared to the other games, and it clearly paid off. Its legacy? Mostly favourable, despite the hate it receives from those who thought Saints Row 2 was better. They're right, although the fans often take it too far and will attack you for liking the third or 4 more. I posted on Reddit about 4 being my favourite Saints Row game, and despite me saying that it shouldn't have been called Saints Row 4 and should have been given a side name at least, I still received paragraphs of disdain telling me all about user scores, sales, and all that toss. Listen, Saints Row 4 sold well. The ratings could have been biased, as a lot of people were clamoring for more of what Saints Row 2 had. We've seen games recently that just get review bombed on online user scores. So again, I don't doubt that would have happened with Saints Row 4, with fans sad about not getting more of Saints Row 2. I reckon people just need to get over it at this point. If someone likes the third or Saints Row 4 more, who are you to look down on them for that? By bringing up sales and the majority of users' opinion on Reddit and other sites, these people fail to realise that, hey, by their logic, Saints Row the Third is clearly the best because it sold more, and they also fail to realise that people that hated those last 2 games always seem to bring up Saints Row 2, and they just keep falling into that crowd, and it's sad, man. Why can't we just agree to disagree? The reboot has made that even worse. Some really weird people like the reboot, and that's okay. I don't, but I won't attack you for it. You're allowed to like what you like, even if it's not that good compared to other games in the genre. You might be wondering where that little rant came from. Well, Saints Row the Third started the division within the Saints Row fanbase, with Saints Row 4 adding to it, along with Get Out of Hell. The difference between the third/4 and the reboot is that the reboot just isn't a good game, period. It's funny how in the special edition of the reboot, a better game is given to you for free. Wow. Overall, you get a lot of bang for your buck with Saints Row the Third, especially the full package, which includes all the DLCs, including new clothing, vehicles, and weapons too. The full package being the original game, which is available on the PS3, PC, Xbox 360, and more recently got a port to the Nintendo Switch. Saints Row the Third Remastered is on the PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and PC, and is the version I played for this review. The game itself is polarizing amongst the Saints Row fanbase, but it's undeniable that Saints Row 3 is the most accessible game in the series. I personally rate it as my 3rd favourite Saints Row, behind Saints Row 2 and Saints Row 4. It's been 11 years since this game released, and to this day, if I were to introduce someone to this franchise with the best example of the overall identity and get them to play it for the first time, Saints Row the Third will always be that game. It might not be the best game in the series as a whole, but it will always be the best example of it. Thank you for watching.